Hi friends, this is Andrea again, following up from our last video about the beginning chain to your crochet project. And now we're going to be adding the next row from the right to the left, done in a single crochet. So to leave off, we have our chain in which our hook is still within the last loop. And then from here, the one thing I really want to stress before we even start into this is your chain can easily get twisted around and around and around, and it's hard to tell what's up from down. In truth, there really is some flatness to it that you can see. Almost imagine it like a braid, if you will, where there is a series of loops that seemingly look like they are all belong on one side versus the other. So typically, even especially if you're crocheting right-handed like I am, you tend to be working from right to left, and then you'll be rotating the project back around and then continuing this right to left concept. So this still remains the same. I still have a similar hold to how I was before. Whatever your little secret is, again, I've got this funky little twist and curl, but I do like to keep these back fingers and thumb holding a little bit of tension or giving me a little bit of support here. And so from this point, I have this loop coming from an originating loop. Now I'm going to be adding height to this chain and working back. This is how you gain real estate in the crochet world. And so in order to do that, I don't want to go back and work into this first chain. For one thing, it will just kind of undo what I just did. I need to go back and work into the chain before so that I'm using this as my height, and then I'm working back that way. And so for instance, I'm going to be working in all these top loops. So the concept is this: I am working into a loop. I need to gather some yarn to attach it. So I'm grabbing it just like I did in the world of the chain, and I'm pulling it through just simply to attach it. Now I have 2 loops on my hook. So from there, now I have to complete the stitch. Grab it again, just like you would in the world of chain. Again, don't let it get too tight or it's going to be a bear to pull through. And now I'm making the stitch. So there's my height. Can't quite see it till you get a little bit further, but now here's my next loop in the chain. So I'm going into the top of that chain. Okay, this goal is to grab some yarn to attach it to that stitch and then pull it through both loops to finish the stitch. And this continues. This is where these fingers are really helpful for me to help keep this a little more flat. Puncture it into the next chain, pull it through. So it's the same tension on both. That attached it to the chain. Now I'm completing the stitch. Let me do a few more here, and you'll start to see our progress. Okay, now you can see how we're building up the height when we still have the tail of the chain. So that will continue all the way down to the end until we turn and rotate once more. It's always good to just pause and look at the full picture of what's happening here. Is this making sense? And then you can catch yourself earlier. This is great practice, especially early in learning the skill, because if you can catch yourself where there's a hiccup, perhaps you missed something or missed a stitch, then you don't want to catch it when you've gotten four rows added to this and then you have to rip them all out. So every once in a while, just pause, just see where you're going, see where you've been, and make sure they still line up with each other, and then continue. I always question, do I need to go into this last little bit that's the knot? And the answer is yes, just because otherwise you're left with this really awkward tail and you start to do this kind of hourglass shape. The origin of your crochet. Okay, and there you have it. You'll have a rectangular piece like so that you'll build on to the next bit. So to add to that, now I'm going to do 1 chain. So remember that all the way back to the beginning. This is going to enable you to now gain the height of the next row. So because I'm right-handed, I'm now rotating it, just rotating that work around, because I'm going to be working this direction now. Same direction, but I have to rotate it in order to do so. Now here is where things change just a little bit. From the origin of the chain, you were just looking at 1 single loop to go through. Now you have this almost beautiful little double stitch, or what looks like a little V towards the top. There's a variety of stitches that will say work in the back stitch, work in the front stitch. For means of just this single crochet, we're going to be working through both of the stitches. And I believe it or not, it's actually a little bit easier than working in the chain. And so I stitched up 1. I don't want to work into the origin of that one, because again, I'll undo what I already did, but I'm going back into this little V here. Let me turn it this direction. And I'm grabbing the yarn, pulling it through to attach it, and then pulling it through both to gain my stitch. So that will repeat. I'm putting it through underside of that V, grabbing it to pull through 1 in order to attach, pull through both to complete the stitch. And now that continues all the way down. Okay, so now to highlight this end piece, again, you'll have this very rectangular form that continues to grow in height, and then you'll have this funny little tail. It's not so easy to tell what is the stitch and what's not, but there is one, I promise, one little sneaky one right here at the very end you definitely want to get into, otherwise you start to do what I call drop stitches. And so there is your rectangle. Now from there, it repeats. You chain 1. If you're continuing with the single crochet, you chain 1, you flip so that you continue to work in the same direction, and then that will continue all the way back, and so on and so forth. Well done, my friends. Keep it up. Happy crocheting.